Welcome, everybody, to the Something in the Air podcast, brought to you the first and third Wednesdays of the month here at the Press of Atlantic City. It is the beginning of the month. We are coming off of another snowstorm as we're recording this in New Jersey State Climatologist, Dr. Dave Robinson. Have you decided to move to the shore yet?
No, but I know what was in the air there this past month. A lot more flakes than I saw here in central New Jersey. But
we are on a roll.
I'm a climatologist, not a meteorologist, so I'll stick with the long-term means and head up to Sussex County.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Maybe this might change your mind. Atlantic City International Airport, 33.2 inches of snow. More snow than Burlington, Vermont, Worcester, Massachusetts, Portland, Maine. What else we got here? I'm looking at my list. Concord, New Hampshire. It's pretty good.
Absolutely. And a lot more than New Brunswick, New Jersey or Sussex, New Jersey. But I might add, that's more snow than Atlantic City had in the last 3 winters combined. So we climatologists look at the long term.
I don't remember anything before this year. My mind's very fuzzy.
Revel in it.
Yeah.
Also revel in the fact that Atlantic City Airport since 1958 has had 20 winters with less than 10 inches of snow for the whole winter.
Yeah.
And yet you had 2 10-inch plus storms this month. That just shows you the average snowfall is kind of humorous,
right?
When you look at it. I think the average in Atlantic City is 17.7. The median is 14 something, but the most was 58. I'm going to look at my numbers.
It's about 58. I think
58.1 in 09-10, but the second most is only 46.9 in 66-67. Now, these records only go back to the winter of 58-59.
Right. So. It's been a heck of a month. And one more thing, too. Atlantic City International Airport also has the most January snow on record with this 33.3 inches. The old record was, I have it here in my notes, we blew it away. It was 20.9 in 1987. So
it was amazing. But your listeners have to revel in the fact that you were ground zero for snow this month.
Yes.
It was unusual south of you down to Delmarva to Norfolk, but not with the totals that accumulated Atlantic City. And north of you, remember, Toms River had essentially nothing in the first storm on the third. So only got into it with the storm on the 7th, but when everybody in the state got into it. And then, of course, the big hit this past couple of days. So, and you go west of you, folks, and out in Hamilton. Mm-hmm. Hamilton this month had 17.5 inches of snow. So, right there in the immediate AC area and metropolitan area, if you will, really has bonus.
It's been, I'm loving it. And you're right. We cover Hamilton, we cover Bridgeton. Those places have not seen as much snow, but still, I think everywhere did pretty good. Bridgeton, you might have a total. I think it was 7. I would have to double check off the top of my head, but I think it was about 7 they got. But anyway, so this was a blizzard at the shore. National Weather Service confirmed it. 35-mile-an-hour winds, visibility at or under a quarter mile. Blowing snow, doesn't have to snow for 3+ hours. Yep, for 3+ hours. That is key. And it underwent bombogenesis, which everyone loves to hear about. It dropped, I believe, 35 millibars in 18 hours. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's amazing. And 24 in 24 hours is the minimum.
Right.
So it was 1.5 times that in terms of how quickly this low deepened, the bottom fell out. And frankly, what's remarkable is that this was seen in the forecast models a week before, some hint. There wasn't any energy from this storm essentially in the continental US until 2-3 days before. it was coming off the Pacific and there was some low pressure off the southeastern coast. Yet the forecast models, as imperfect as they were and how much they varied from one model to the next and how much an individual model waffled back and forth a little, ultimately it was a major success in forecasting. They didn't nail it perfectly everywhere, and some of us got less than predicted by just a little bit. But for the most part, we knew for days in advance that the coast was going to get the most. The question was the coast going to get it? And if so, how much, right?
Yeah. And it really came down to this, I would say maybe from like 2 to 9 a.m., this band of snow that just set up and was dumping heavy snow, maybe 2-inch per hour rates with this. And then you saw that band. I was watching radar. You see that heavy band offshore. It's just slowly moving away. I'm like, just bring it back. But it's okay. It's okay. I think if you love snow, you're loving this winter. If you don't like snow, you did have the past 2 winters to be okay with here. I'm going to ask you a vague question. In this climate changing world, do we see more of these kind of really classic nor'easters, these classic snowy nor'easters develop?
They're rare enough that it's difficult to come to any kind of scientifically robust conclusion. But look up in Boston. I was just seeing in the Globe up there, they've had the majority of their top 10 snowstorms have all been in the last 20, 25 years. And they have records going back to the 19th century. Mm-hmm. And measurement practices haven't changed all that much that would influence it, nor have the location of the measurements. So there's some credibility, and it sounds counterintuitive. And when I was quoted in a couple of articles earlier in January, I got some nasty emails sent to me saying, you fool, you're saying it could snow more as the world gets warmer, or you're trying to explain away why it's not snowing less. But it all makes physical sense. When you have warmer air, it can hold more moisture. Now, that includes especially air that's warming from 15 to 25 to 30 degrees. It really changes there. So if in the past we were 5 degrees cooler, we would have had less moisture to work with in the atmosphere. Now we're 5 degrees warmer, but it's still below freezing when these storms are coming in. So they're able to have more moisture entrained within them, thus potentially heavier snow. So now, once you pass that magical 32-degree mark, you're going to see these become more rain events. But when you can introduce enough cold air, you've got a very warm, anomalously warm Atlantic sea surface temperatures. So that's a rich moisture source. When your atmosphere is still below freezing, but close to freezing, bam. I mean, you can really produce some prodigious snowfall in a warming climate. I mean, there's ample evidence to suggest that the more northern latitudes will get snowier before they get less snowy. There's even some evidence in some research I've been involved with that the northern plains are getting more snow now because they're not as brutally cold in the winter, yet still well below freezing and getting more of a moisture flow into the area. So, but the tough part is that these big storms are pretty rare. So it's difficult to get a judge. We've talked about this with tornadoes. You can even talk about it somewhat with hurricanes, that there's just not a large enough sample in some cases to come to any firm conclusions, but theoretically, it makes sense.
Right. And we did a story I think it was last April, about what does wintertime climate change mean in South Jersey. And one of the things, to your point, was the increase in the snowfall totals. And when we updated our 10-year climate averages that we did do last year, so we went from a 1991 to 2020 baseline, and before it was 1981, 2010. Atlantic City International and Lower Township saw more snowfall in their new averages up to that 17 that you were just talking about before. So it, just kind of feeding into what you were just saying before.
Right. Now, you have to realize, though, that eventually, and we continue to see this warming, it's going to become less common. We saw in December a huge flux of moisture up into Fairbanks, Alaska. They had over 5 inches of liquid when you melt down the snow, and they had freezing rain and even some plain rain. They normally get a half an inch of moisture. Just remarkable flow of moisture up there that just we hadn't seen previously. So, but again, you can't just even take that 1 month and say you can say this is evidence, not necessarily evidence, but it gives you an idea of what the future might hold given changes in weather patterns. Gotcha. So, there's a lot to unpack here. But decreasing snow in the middle Atlantic, we haven't necessarily seen it yet, but we've seen our share of major storms in the last couple of decades.
Oh, yeah. And, I want to touch upon that January 3rd, 4th storm just quickly because we talked about it last time. But that was, I'm thinking at the time, I'm like, pretty good storm for us here. And then this came through, of course, at the end of the month. But that was generally 8 to 14 inches for like Southern Ocean, most of Atlantic and northern Cape May County, and then less as you went south and north. Like you said, Tom's River barely saw anything with that storm. We covered it a good amount. I just didn't know if you wanted to add anything onto that.
No, but there's put in context with the storm we just had. There's the key. It's a matter of miles. 50 miles further east, and this storm wouldn't have been much. 50 miles further west, the January 3rd storm would have been more impressive. So it's just, and the other lesson learned is that the western end of these storms, where you cut off the moisture, can be pretty sharp. Sure. You can go from a foot of snow to an inch of snow within 20, 30 miles sometimes. So, and this is very reminiscent. This actually was somewhat of a minor version of the December 26, 2010 storm. And I know you've talked about that.
My favorite one of all time.
Yeah, this storm, I won't say by any means paled in comparison to it, but it was reduced. And it was about 25 miles further to the west. So central New Jersey got into the 15 to 20 inch snowfall totals, but over by the Delaware River Basin, it was the 6 inch total.
Right.
This one also is a little less to the north. That one was really aligned north to south.
Yeah.
But it happens, and it's going to happen again.
And maybe by Valentine's Day, we'll see. Our pattern's looking favorable for something through Valentine's Day. This was our last podcast that we did. We actually did a winter kind of halfway point, reset here. And we were talking to Rob Reel from WeatherWorks in Hackettstown. And, he was saying that their forecast is through Valentine's Day. We have the Pacific North American pattern, the PNA, that's going to remain positive. That promotes low pressure troughiness, areas of upper level low pressure in the east. North Atlantic Oscillation, which measures the pressure differences in Greenland and Iceland and the Azores. We can get into that another time, but it's going to be favored in such a way that produces slower moving storms up the coast. So, I think we have a little more winter left in us here. But I do want to get to the other storms just real quick. January 7th pales in comparison here. We had 5.6 at ACY. It was generally 3 to 6 in Cape May County. And that was another one where, again, it was mostly snow. It was just incredible.
Yeah, that was a statewide. That was a statewide event. Everyone was in the 5 inch plus or minus a couple inch range. So everyone shared alike with that storm.
Yeah. And then I do want to talk about not snow. The one storm, well, it depends on where you were, a little bit of snow, but for us, it was not snow. Martin Luther King Day, where we got up to the 50s on the southeast wind. And, we had some severe weather. We actually had nickel-sized hail in Ocean County. That was actually the largest hailstone in New Jersey's January history. Fun fact. And then we had wind damage in Little Lake Harbor, Tuckerton. I actually went down there because there was a little chatter about, did we get a tornado? Radar kind of supported it, but I went down there, took the drone up. It was all straight line wind damage, and it was a small path. So National Weather Service and I kind of talked about it a little bit. They decided it was something from a rear inflow jet, which was kind of air just kind of like zooming back into the base of the cloud. And then we had 2 severe thunderstorm warnings in Ocean County. Only 8 have ever been issued in January there. And then this one, from a climate perspective, I want to get your thoughts on this. We had 0.19 inches in 5 minutes in Harvey Cedars. I think that's pretty impressive for January, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's indicative of what we were talking about earlier with this Clausius-Clapeyron relationship. With warmer temperatures, the atmosphere has more moisture. And we were talking about temperatures in the 50s there. So there was certainly the opportunity to have abundant moisture available for a rainfall intensity like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's like 2, I think I did the math on this, 2.25 inch per hour rainfall rates. If that was July, you'd still say that was torrential rain that was falling at that. So, it was only 5 minutes, but I'm just saying
that was an impressive burst. And then, it ended as snow in the Northwest. The irony is the Northwest part of the state, maybe 10 inches, 15 inches of snow this month.
Yeah.
But they've had snow on the ground for more days than down around Atlantic City. They've had snow on the ground since that storm, Martin Luther King, and they had snow earlier in the month. But that's indicative of the colder climate up there. The snow is just hanging on the ground there the last couple of weeks, just a couple inches of snow.
Right. And just to kind of poke into that a little bit more. So you're saying that that's just directly a result of the colder climate? Like, does the latitude have something to do with it? I mean, we are a little bit further south.
Yeah. I mean, elevation, latitude, proximity to the coast, all of these things come into play.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're going to take a break. I need a breather after that, all that snow. We're going to come back on the other end. We're going to talk about the temperatures. We'll talk about some other things here. You guys are listening to the Something in the Air podcast.
Hey everyone, it's meteorologist Joe Martucci again. Every time I do a talk, I say if I could take this job again, I would take it 10 times out of 10. And that's for many reasons. One, weather just matters more down here. I've been in many corners of the state, and when it comes to southeastern New Jersey, weather is the most important thing I always hear. Whether it's for tourism, whether it's for farming, or whether it's for boating, well, weather just plays a big role. And not only that, here at the Press of Atlantic City, we're able to give this information to you any way you want. You want it in your newspaper? We got it. You want it in videos? We got it. You want it on our website? Yeah, we have that too. And we can't do it without your support. Your support has been great over the past couple of years, and we look forward to more of your support in the future. To support South Jersey journalism, go to our website, pressofac.com/subscribe, and you'll have offers that you can't refuse. That's pressofac.com/subscribe.
And we are back to the Something in the Air podcast, brought to you the first and third Wednesdays of every month. If you go back in time on these podcast episodes, we have a rest of the winter forecast for you. We were talking about that a little bit in the first half. And we're going to get some more exciting guests. Not as exciting as Dr. Dave Robinson, but more exciting.
I think I'm just going to leave.
No. I said, I don't mean more as in more exciting than you. I just meant, hey, we're going to have additional exciting guests. Maybe that was the words I should have used on that.
All right.
No one's more exciting than you.
I'll stay put. Oh, well, I wouldn't go that far.
No.
Anyway,
all right.
What do you want to talk about now?
How about temps? Because, with all this snow, it needs to be pretty cold. And I know we were below average, but I'm just going to kind of give it to you here. I'm going to pass the football off to you. Tell us how we did in the state for the month of January. And if you can focus on, South coastal area.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's below average. It looks like the marina is going to come in 2.2, 2.3 degrees below normal. And the airport closer to 4 below normal. It varies a little around the state. Philadelphia is only a little more than a degree below normal, but you get up in the north a couple of degrees. So it's below normal. Unusually so, no, not even unusually so for the last 10 or 15 years. 2015 was a cold January. 2018 was a cold January. These are temperatures when, whether you look back to 58 or Atlantic City or back in the 1870s at the marina, there's somewhere, if you divided all the Januaries up into thirds, there's somewhere near the bottom of the middle third for cold and the top of the upper third for cold. Yeah. So right there. So in other words, roughly 2 out of 3 Januaries are milder, but 1 out of 3 are colder. And that's, pretty impressive in this day and age. But interestingly enough, in looking at the changes with the new normals and looking at the winter, December and February warmed from the pulling out the 80s and adding the teens. They warm more than January's. And even looking back longer, January hasn't warmed as rapidly as the shoulder months of winter. And we don't know exactly why. Circulation regimes and so on and so forth, maybe a little bit more snow to keep things colder. But January isn't the month that's really popped in terms of the winter warming. It's been more December, February, and into March, where there's been more pronounced warming over the last several decades compared to earlier in the 20th century.
Right. Now, are we seeing the same in the summer? Like, is July not warming as much as June or August or?
No, the summer is warming pretty uniformly. What's interesting about the summer is just the persistence of how it is warmed.
Right.
But then we can look at extreme temperatures too, because one thing we've noticed in our studies is that the extreme cold days of winter are warming at a faster pace than the temperatures, the overall average winter temperature. Right. So we're not getting those brutally cold nights. And it got cold a number of January nights. A couple of our weather network stations in Northwest Jersey at Sandyston and Walpack have had 5 days of sub-zero morning temperatures and as cold as -10. But -10 isn't even that extreme for cold. You get to 20 below in those areas. That's extreme. And 10 down at Atlantic City. That's impressive. Don't get me wrong. But it's not that extreme cold that we've seen historically. And this is really important. We've talked about this, I think, before with like the wintering over of invasive species like the southern pine beetle. Mm-hmm. They don't like to be freeze dried at sub-zero temperatures in the pinelands. Right. We haven't had sub-zero temperatures in the pinelands, despite it's been a cold month.
Yeah. And, ACY lowest temperature in the single digits, but not below zero. So I think I think it's fair to say it's been more persistently cold than it has been extreme cold. And a couple of numbers I threw out to you is we didn't have a high temperature below 20 and we didn't have a low temperature below zero. And that's the same in I know we're saying Atlantic City or Nashville, but that was the same in Hamilton. That was the same in Lower Township. Of course, the shore isn't going to get as cold, but, around there here. But what I want you, if we can, and I know you weren't alive for this, but in 1977, right, we talk about that winter. What was that like? We talk about 77 or 79, like just in general, off the top of your head, like what kind of cold were we talking about during those kind of winters?
Yeah, we had some real cold winters there, and one of the snowiest winters in 77, 78. And thank you, but that was college and the end of college days for me. So and I didn't even live in Jersey during those winters except over the breaks. But I was out in South Central Pennsylvania at college. There we had, even look at some of the football games, the Cincinnati football game that was played, not even have to go up to Green Bay, and temperatures of 15, 20 below down in Asheville, North Carolina. Now we had a couple of those in the early 80s as well.
81 was
I'm not so sure if the Cincinnati game wasn't in 81. and not in but the winters of 76, 77, and 78, those would be that the years in which winter ended. So 75, 76, those 3 winters were exceptional in terms of the cold across the United States, especially central and eastern US. And the fact that they were back to back to back, and 79 was no slouch either. Yeah, that's when cold was cold, if you will. Now, we saw that in the early 60s as well and such, but we haven't seen such a plethora of those brutally cold winters with just remarkable low temperatures. We saw some in the 90s, the winter of 94, the winter of 96. But particularly 94 had some one brutally cold day where it got to 30 below up in Northwest Jersey. But
God,
no, they're rare. Now, some will say, will we ever see them again? And meteorologically, we could get a similar situation again, but climatologically, our cold air masses are getting warmer and our warm air masses are getting warmer, but especially when regarding the former, it's just difficult to get that kind of cold, but it's not impossible. Look at the central part of the US last February when that polar vortex lobe came down through the central part of the country into Texas, and some areas there had their all-time coldest temperatures. So you can't take that purely off the table. It's just the cold is becoming much more rare and the warm is becoming much more common. So we've just kind of shifted the curve or stacked the deck or you know, put cold off the die, or just, you know.
You got all the things.
Yeah, you got all these metaphors and whatever, just to get the impression of probabilities.
All right, so let's wrap it up here for our January episode. I was thinking this might have to be a director's cut episode with all the exciting stuff, and we might be there. But let's just wrap it up. Tell us what's going on with the Climate Office this month as we go into February, and where can we find that real-time weather, temperatures, what do we got, winds, and more?
Yeah, well, there's our weather network, njweather.org, but this time of the year in the State Climate Office, njclimate.org, you can look at snowfall totals by county and with a map following each snowfall event in the state. You have to be a little patient because we do quality control of these. We actually write our observers to say, when did you measure your snow? How did you measure your snow? And we educate them in the process. So look in the next couple of days to see the map for this latest storm and anyone we've had so far this winter. So we're pretty busy with that post storms, and credit to Matt Gerbish, the assistant state climatologist, for Matt takes the lead with that, and I get to put my 2 cents in now and then.
Your name's still on the email.
It's still on the email.
It's good to be the lead.
And I still was one of the on the committee that set up the National Weather Service snow measurement guidelines twice now. We updated it about a decade ago. So yeah, I'm the snow geek, but Matt's the one that really puts the effort into working with our observers who do a wonderful job. Our automated network, we only have a few automated sonic snow gauges. I would love to have more, but we rely on our volunteer observers to just plaster the state with snowfall reports, and it's really very much appreciated.
Yeah, no, it's great for everybody involved in the weather community. We got a lot of data from this most recent event. We'll also do another Coco Ross article for the press at some point in the not too distant future. We'll see what happens. All right, so thank you everybody for tuning in. Hope you got everything you need to know about January here across South Jersey and the Jersey Shore. We will be back with you 2 Wednesdays from now. That will be February, let's see, I'm on the other schedule. Let's see, February 9th. How about that? February 9th. Or no, I'm sorry.
No, 16th.
16th. Thank you. February 16th. Guests to be determined. Additional exciting guests to be determined. Not more exciting guests to be determined. But until then, everybody, we'll talk to you soon. You can visit us at pressafac.com/weather for the latest. He's Dr. Dave Robinson, New Jersey State Climatologist. I am Joe Martucci, meteorologist at the Press of the Jersey State. Take care.